And we're live.
Okay, since I have the first item in the agenda, then I will just kick it off. I have linked in the agenda an issue, which is regarding configurable issue boards, which is for creating end-to-end tests for this feature as part of the enterprise test gaps activity that the quality department is taking over. And I need some feedback from someone that is involved in the development of issue boards, because I have described 3 different scenarios that I'm going to test. 2 of them are already implemented, and the third one would involve um, configuring an issue board by milestone, by label, by assignee, and by weight. But I would like to know if the logic is the same for these different kind of filters. I would implement only one of them, and because end-to-end tests, they are quite time consuming. So if the logic is the same, I would implement just one of them, but I would really like to know if the logic is the same or not, and if I should or not implement all of these scenarios. Does anyone here has been involved in issue boards development that could help?
So I remember that Felipe did a lot of work on this. I think he's not on the call right now. Offhand, I think that the logic is very similar for all of them, but I'm not sure if it's actually same for all of them. But the point is always same. We remove the label or assignee in the column one or assign that one. But
yeah, I can ask him directly, or
yeah, I think it will be best to check with him.
Who is it exactly?
It's Felipe Artur.
All right.
Yeah, he has done a lot of work on boards.
Yeah, I'll talk to him. Thanks.
No problem.
Yeah, I think it is similar. I haven't developed it, but the logic is basically exclusive. So every additional thing that you configure the board by excludes whatever issues, just like the filter bar would. And there's not any conditional and or not logic. It's just all like, additive filters. That makes sense.
Thanks a lot.
All right, I think I have the next one. So I kind of just have noticed a couple times, like we'll have an issue that we schedule for like a milestone, and then it turns out that we end up either getting blocked by having to add something to pajamas, or we end up delivering the thing in pajamas and then not implementing it back in the actual production and the product itself. So I linked to a couple issues, and I just wanted to talk about how we can do it in a way that we either identify it ahead of time that it's going to be a blocker or what they are, or we don't treat the addition of pajamas as done as deliverable. Because I found we're creating these issues after the fact that it just got implemented in our design system but not in production, so let's create a new issue for that and then we'll deal with that later. So then we end up slipping a lot on various things that I as a product manager don't understand or have insight into. And so I just want to talk about how can we as a team contribute to pajamas while also delivering features to our customers in a kind of consistent way. So I don't know what the solution is, but just kind of wanted to open the floor for discussion.
Is Annabelle on the maybe? Yeah, so it's kind of a interesting state that we're in with pajamas, because we've got OKRs that were established a bit ago around just getting pajamas to kind of a base set, because up until recently we've got a few different places where we have shared components. So there was an effort, there's an epic that involves kind of a list of all of the components that we want to get into GitLab UI or pajamas. And then each component that we determined we need to create a component in GitLab UI for has 4 separate issues around designing it, styling it in CSS, building it in GitLab UI, and then finally implementing it. I don't think we've gone through and mapped out the implementation step for a lot of those. And Annabelle, you can probably talk through a little bit of that a little bit better than I can. But I think that's, since we don't have that step mapped out, that's where some of the issues, as far as like, because sometimes we have issues inside of GitLab versus other times we have issues inside of GitLab UI, just creating a bit of a confusion on some of those things.
Yeah, the implementation is what I'm still unclear on too. But the 2 issues that you linked to, Gabe, are interesting, because one of them was implemented in GitLab UI, and that's the scope labels restyled. So that's ready to go. As soon as, I mean, it's been implemented fully. It's completed all the steps. We just need to implement it. And then the first one, I just moved, or wait, no, we just to GitLab UI, and we're only going to put it in GitLab UI because there's no point in duplicating it in the product and within Pajamas. So I'm going to do the design, and front end will implement it only in GitLab UI. The only blocker I see is figuring out when implementation is happening and which components we're going to prioritize there. And I thought that the issue filter was the component that we're thinking of implementing in the product first. Is that right, Donald?
As far as any of the components?
Yeah, just overall, any Pajamas component.
No, I think that one is also going to be in GitLab UI first. That one's currently being worked on, and then we're going to implement it into product.
Right, and that's happening this release. Is that the first thing that's going to be?
Oh, I got you. I got you. Yeah, technically, there are other components that we're using GitLab UI inside of the, like all of the charts are currently using the GitLab UI version, but the first formal implementation, I believe, is filter. I believe you're right. It's filters.
Yeah, I guess that's just why I'm confused on a little bit, because the first issue that I put in my bullet point was, the interactive popovers, and there was a comment like, let's go ahead and put it in GitLab UI because we don't want to duplicate the work, and I completely agree with that. But then there's not. This is blocking like another thing, that removing the question mark from the labels that somebody like opened an issue for yesterday, and so that's kind of why it's top of mind for me. But like there's no follow through of like, yes, I agree, let's put it in GitLab UI, and then yes, let's take the next step like right away as part of it being a deliverable, like, or a done thing to implement it, and so that way we unblock other things that are like blocked by not doing this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so for that one specifically, because what we're going to need to do is implement all of the labels inside of product to use the GitLab UI label, which would be the implementation step of labels, which we haven't done yet. Once that's done, then we're going to get this 4661 for free in the product. So I don't know if there should be, I don't think there should be another issue saying, let's implement interactive popovers inside of product. There should be another issue that says we need to implement labels inside of product. And then, does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
That issue should exist somewhere. I'll look for it. Like Donald said, everything was structured in an epic. So every component has 4 issues attached to that epic. And implementation is one of the issues for each component epic. So we do have an issue.
Okay, I'll go look through some of that stuff. I just want to make sure that like we are prioritizing those things. It just like the more issues that you create for the different things, the more stuff gets like sometimes buried. And so that's where I want to have like a normal process to where we do follow through with the implementation step. And that's a priority and something that we talk about, that we like plan for in each release or the milestone that we do, so we can say, hey, we're going to implement these things to like make us, and we have 30 more after that, so let's pick 3 for each one and just like kind of get it done. So do we have like a kind of plan for that, or a master epic or issue or somewhere that we can like see the things that we have to implement, so that as we like, or is that something I can work with you, Donald, on, as we do release planning for each release, especially like this 12.5 is coming up?
Yeah, and we did that for the first 3 steps a bit ago with Tori, but we haven't done the implementation step, which we need to do. I actually was just working off of an issue to get level of estimates on all 37 of the GitLab components GitLab UI components that we committed to doing. I'm trying to find it now, but I think that's a good starting point. And then what we'll do is, I think what the plan is to eventually do what we did with the first 3 stages. So each different stage will commit to taking a handful of the implementation steps of components into our product. So at that point, then we're going to definitely have to have those issues as part of our backlog or schedule in our releases.
Okay, cool. Is labels a good one to start with? Because we also have the restyled scope labels, the stuff that's done that would make sense to get in sooner rather than later if we can.
Yeah, labels we should just go ahead and do. I think we're at the place where it's ready now for implementation. Right,
I just opened a merge request yesterday to finish them up, so they are done and merged and ready. And then that can free up resources to do the popovers next. Which, by the way, do we need a milestone for? It's in the backlog. I'm still trying to finish up 12.4 stuff and things that are already scheduled, but the popovers don't have a milestone yet.
I'm okay with throwing that in 12.4 for the GitLab UI work.
Okay, I don't know if I'm going to have time to do the design the entire, or as soon as you would need it for front end, but
okay. Let's just put it in 12.5 for now, and if we finish up early, we can pull it into 12.4.
Sounds good.
Cool, thanks. The other thing, my last point that I had is, if anybody sees an issue in a current milestone that doesn't have a workflow label, like add one, and if you're not sure which one to add, then ping me, just because I stumbled across a couple and they're not like, unless they have a workflow label, I don't track them for the current milestone, if that makes sense, just because like the issue boards that we use are all configured for workflow labels. So that's just like a slight note, and I'll like probably add that to our page in the handbook just as like a process note for everybody who looks at it in the future. Is there any questions about that? No.
That kind of brings up like weights also. We're still having a few issues that probably get added after the fact that don't have weights added to them. It's just helpful to, because on the planning side, we use weights to determine what our capacity is going to be for the upcoming releases. I think it's just helpful if you are working on an issue that doesn't have a weight, just throw like even a 1 on there. Just makes it easier than having to figure out a bunch of weightless issues at the end of release.
Cool. Gabe, I'll take that on. We'll add note to handbook. The other thing I was gonna suggest too at some point, I don't know if it makes sense, but getting in a more continuous flow for doing weighting. Because right now I think we just assign a couple folks for like a short period for each release, but trying to get more into a continuous flow. I'd like things like when we do the planning breakdown, like we don't move things into ready for scheduling until it has a weight. But to do that, like it feels like it's not natural to wait until the day before or a couple days before you kick off a new release to do that. because then it's hard to prioritize. So I don't know if there's like a way to do it more fluently and getting more people involved to do it kind of like ad hoc as there are items that need to be weighted. Do you have any input on that? Anybody?
Yeah, we were thinking about it also, and we could probably have this conversation async, but maybe if we could, instead of, because right now I think the weighing is done, like you said, in the current or in the upcoming release a couple days before the release, regardless of where things are in the queue. If we can move it from being release based to maybe column based, so people that are responsible for weighing in a certain time are responsible for weighing anything that's unweighed in one of our columns. That might work. I don't know. The way we're doing it now is the timing is off, so we definitely need to make an adjustment there.
Okay, I'll open up an issue just to do some async conversation around this and maybe other process improvements, so everybody on the team can have an opportunity to weigh in and contribute. So that would be great.
Early for those puns, Gabe.
Yeah.
This might just be me because I came in right as workflows were kind of being put in. Some clear definitions on when we change workflow labels, or how we want to, like what are the criteria for each, like when do we move it from solution validation to scheduling, just that we can have that clear. I know I've had some questions from people and I realized I couldn't answer them. So I think if we could maybe in that same issue, Gabe, you're talking about for process, and we could just document it. And I know that'd be helpful.
Yeah, there's a MR that I think Fabian and Gio is working on with Josh Lambert to update the product workflow with more clarity around labels and how they're used. But if it's not explicit enough there, I will either open a follow-on MR to update it in that point, or maybe just add it to our team's handbook page if it's not like something that the rest of the company wants to deal with right now. So.
Cool.
All right. Anybody have anything else?
Who recorded this one?
I did.
Nice. All right. So can you upload it to YouTube? Actually,
yes.
Do we automate that yet?
I don't think so. But yes, I would love to.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Have a wonderful day, evening, afternoon, wherever you are. And thanks for coming.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye.